So here is our passage number 2. So when I look at this second passage, this is not exactly a very nuanced or a very layered passage. There is only one major point that is being made, and that is the world's major energy companies are not doing enough to move towards clean energy. So they committed, but then they'd move towards them. They committed that they'd reduce extraction of oil through conventional means, but now they are backtracking. And as you move further, you'd realize the same thing that has been, it's a detail that you find. Eventually, by the time we reach this paragraph, we get something new, that this view may be understandable. Why? Here are some reasons. And here are some more reasons that back up the previous paragraph. But then, finally, in the last two paragraphs, the author once again questions. He says they're understandable, but he still questions their stance. So that's what the passage primarily focuses on. So not a very, as I said, a very layered or a nuanced passage. Not something which had a high density of ideas, and as a result this passage became easy to read and easy to understand. In fact, these are the kind of articles that you typically also find in a newspaper or a magazine. So let's have a look at the fifth question. All of the following statements are untrue except. So this un and except get cancelled out. So we just need to look at one statement that is true and pick up that as our answer. So A, oil companies have spent less than 5% of their production and extraction costs on renewable energy. The passage says that they have spent less than 5% on clean energy. Now, if clean energy is equal to renewable energy, or if renewable energy is a subset of clean energy, then it is going to be true. But unfortunately, these two terms are distinct. They appear similar. Clean energy basically means any way of producing energy that does not produce greenhouse gases. Renewable energy is any source of energy which is naturally recoverable, naturally sustainable. So it may or may not be greenhouse gas emission free. So for example, when we look at hydropower, hydropower is renewable, but it is not clean because even that production involves some amount of greenhouse gas emission. And that is why a correct label for A should be can't say. Let's have a look at B. State-owned companies have the wherewithal to take a more long-term view than publicly traded oil companies. The author says that they should be in a position to avoid that quarterly pressure, right? So that's the focus that we are getting at here. Does it really talk about wherewithal? It does. I think in the end, yeah. If we look at the last paragraph, I think this can be arrived at. So when we say nationally owned companies can take a longer term view, look beyond quarterly shareholder pressures, then from that I think, yeah, we can say that this is true. How about C? Most of the world's oil and gas production is supplied by the 7 major publicly traded oil companies. No. They are publicly owned oil companies, not publicly traded, and they are different, right? Government owned. Publicly traded and government owned or publicly owned are, of course, different terms, and therefore you would label it as can't say. D. Oil companies' desire to transition to clean energy solely empty rhetoric. Well, this is the word that we have a problem with. It's not solely empty rhetoric because there is some effort being put still. It's not that there is zero effort being put, and therefore D is definitely false. So the only one that is true is option B, and thus we should go ahead and mark that as our answer. Here is your next question. What is the primary purpose of the author in writing this passage? The primary purpose is to tell us that the oil companies are not doing enough. So A is neutral. So it's very clearly a passage where the author has his opinion. right? So A is neutral. It suggests that the author has not shared his opinion. That helps us rule it out. If I look at D, point out that oil companies committed to transition to clean energy is mainly rhetoric. That is narrow. There is a large part of the passage that is devoted on talking about the fact that they are not doing enough. And that they could have done enough. And then there are also areas, paragraphs dedicated to why they have taken up that stance. So D is maybe the focal point of 1 or 2 paragraphs, but not the entire passage. So even this can be ruled out. B, shied oil companies. Shied is to rebuke. Shied is to tell them that, hey, you're doing something wrong. So to mildly rebuke. So, yep, the author is doing that. He is not in favor of their behavior. C, advocate environmentally friendly governments to legislate against oil companies. No, not at all. This is in fact alien. Quite a few of those companies are, for that matter, owned by government. So why would a government really legislate against itself or against its own company? So the best answer for us is option B. So that's question number 6 for you. Let's look at 7. Each of the following statements cannot be inferred from the passage except. So cannot and except get cancelled. So one of the following gets inferred. Which one? That's going to be our answer. So let's see. A, the production and extraction of oil and gas causes more damage to the environment than any other type of substance extraction. Can't say. So the passage does tell us that production of oil and gas causes damage. Whether there is no other extraction that is as damaging is something that cannot be based on the information supplied by the passage. B, state-owned oil companies do not have the technological prowess to advance the cause of clean energies. Can't say. In fact, this is probably false. They are in a position, yet they have not done that ironically. C, profits and revenue seem to be the main aim of all oil companies. The government-owned companies can take a long-term view. They can look beyond quarterly revenues. So definitely not all oil companies. So this is once again not true. D, oil companies are verbally committed to clean energy but are not doing enough to advance it. Yes, that's true. They've made commitments but they are not spending enough. So this is true, and therefore our answer to question number 7 should be option D. And with that, let's dive into 8. All of the following are valid reasons for oil companies to increase their oil output except. So B, C and D are all mentioned in the passage. A is not mentioned, and that is what makes A the best answer for question number 8. So you'd find different parts of the passage that back up B, C and D, but A appears right on first instance. But then when we choose A, we are bringing in external knowledge, we're bringing in GK, we're not relying exclusively on the passage. So that's why this question maybe became difficult for some of us. So A is going to be our answer for question number 8. So that takes care of our passage 2.